Hi, Reverend Amie B here, trying another conversation video for you, but this time I want to talk about truth and lies. That might seem like one of the most basic conversations we could possibly have, but considering the world that we live in right now, where lies have become truth and truth have become lies, I think that it's a very crucial time for us to talk about why truth matters and why lies wreck everything. Did you know that there are actually a ton of health benefits to truth? My friend Yura Glow, someone I met in Berlin, Germany actually, she does radical honesty workshops. And when I first heard that she did radical honesty workshops, I thought, oh wow, someone who really gets the importance of truth. I'm going to put a little graphic of her truth so that you can see what I'm talking about, but I'm going to read it for you now. So, benefits of telling the truth. Releases tension in the body. Reduces stress levels, naturally regulates the nervous system. So if you have anxiety, depression, all of those things, you know how regulating your emotional system is super important. It increases a sense of awareness, it sharpens perception, it naturally energizes, it releases creative output, it's followed by a sense of warmth and appreciation, courage and content with oneself. It creates a sense of connection and integrity of oneself and one's surroundings. This most definitely includes relationships. It eliminates doubt, persistent thinking, fear, and shame. All things associated with things like anxiety, PTSD. So you can see how it starts to come to do mental health healing. It gives a sense of physical alignment, inner harmony, emotional neutrality. You know, if you haven't told someone something and your body gets all tense, like, oh, I have to tell this person something, it's really hard and I don't know how they're going to react, and you just have those feelings in your body. Well, once you've told the truth, you can release those feelings and begin to deal with the consequences of that truth. And the consequences could be good. I'm just saying cause and effect type of consequences. And ultimately, she says, it elevates the being. It shifts one experience to another and transforms one state of being into another. And that goes into what I just said. You know, you go from a state of anxiety to a state of relief. You go from a state of fear to a state of, oh, that wasn't so bad after all. And now all of that anxiety and worry and projecting and not knowing is all done now. She does talk about the challenges when people tell incomplete truths, when they sugarcoat things. You know, I kind of see that as when we say white lies. It's okay to do a white lie because, you know, it's not that big of a deal. But you never know. I mean, someone, if they have like spinach in their teeth and you don't tell them because you don't want to embarrass them, but then maybe they were about to give a speech about winning the Nobel Peace Prize. And so instead of you saying, hey, you have spinach in your teeth and helping them, they had to go be embarrassed in front of a whole lot more people because of a white lie that you didn't want to hurt their feelings. So just a simple example. Running away in the middle of telling. I would say that that is probably more in line when you have a much harder truth to tell. When you have something that is eating away at your soul because you feel super guilty, or you feel, or you know actually that the truth that you have to tell someone is absolutely going to hurt them because of something that you did. And my question to you is, does it really hurt that person's feelings to hear the truth? Or did what you do or say or feel about that person, is that what hurt them? And you are afraid of telling the truth because you don't want to have to deal with their bad feelings. No one wants to tell that. And as soon as you start telling that truth and you start to feel the reaction of the other person because of their pain, it is so easy to let that pain say, oh no, I can't do this. I'm sorry, never mind, and run away. And so she's saying that's not helpful, and I totally agree. Avoiding direct contact, talking to the air or floor. You're not really connecting with that person when you tell the truth then. And those are also signs, usually, that someone is telling a lie. So if you're really trying to be honest with someone, you need to be aware that eye contact and really connecting with the person and not running away is a necessary part of that journey. And then telling about concepts only and forgetting to talk about what's happening right now. That's a key to it. As I said, it helps the person stay present. It helps them deal with the feelings now, helps them deal with the reaction of the people in front of them and how they're feeling. And that, in addition to being hard, it's also building intimacy with that person, being present with them now, even in the midst of pain. That shows so much respect because it's easy to run away. Earlier, I mentioned that when people say they don't want to tell the truth to someone they're in a relationship with, whether it's friendship or any other sort of attachment, that because they don't want to hurt the person's feelings. So I wanted to expand on that a little bit more. And the reason why I asked that is because have you ever known someone was not telling you the truth? I mean, in any context, whether your kids are lying to you, it doesn't matter the context, but you hear somebody say something to you, you look at them and you think, really? Is that really true? Like, I can't believe that's true, because you have evidence or perceptions or something that lets you know that. And when you ask the person directly, are you sure that's true? They say yes. They say, yes, that is true. But you have a really just strong feeling that it absolutely is not true. How does that make you feel? How does that make you feel about your own ability to perceive reality, to know where you stand with that person? I would imagine it makes you feel a little bit crazy, not to use that word so light, but the gaslighting. There was this movie back in the day, and it was about gaslighting. A man drove his wife crazy in order to get her an inheritance or something, but he kept changing reality. So what she would perceive as reality, he would go around and do things to actually say, no, that's not real, and make her not be able to know what reality was. And so when we think about protecting people, we forget that there's more to communication than our words. Sometimes it's our body actions, it's the way we are around somebody, the energy we bring into a room. And if we're not being honest with our words, we still could be showing our true intentions without even being aware of it. And that dichotomy of truth in your body and in the way that you're carrying yourself, but lies in your words, is very confusing to people. Even if they don't know for sure you're lying, it still causes pain. Beyond gaslighting, I think that we need to look at how, even if we lie to ourselves, we can cause similar types of problems. When we know that something just doesn't feel right, but we want to justify it because dealing with reality is too difficult. Whether it's our own lies or the person lying to us, dealing with reality is too difficult. How does that help you grow? Because I think about everything in terms of we're always trying to work on our own stuff. We're always trying to grow individually and in relationship with one another. And I think the only way that we can truly do that is if we are honest. Because if we lie, we are affecting self-evaluation, we are affecting our ability to evaluate relationships as being healthy or unhealthy. We don't allow ourselves to grow and develop, particularly if we don't want to hear hard truths. Hard truths are called hard truths for a reason, because they're hard to deal with. I think that the more we deal with hard truths, the better we know who we are, the better we know the people around us, the more intimate our relationships, and the more that our decisions about whatever we want to do can be based in reality. And if we extrapolate this to the cultural level, you can see how important it is to be able to make decisions based upon reality. So much of our political life and cultural life are based on lies. They're selling you something, whether it's manipulation and grabs for power, or they're trying to sell you products that you don't really need. They're trying to sell you an idea of who you should be, even though you should not be someone else's idea of you ever. I mean, there's all of these ways that lies are used to create false realities, false expectations, false goals, and to separate us, as though, if you have all these defined ways about how you should exist, then if you don't fit in those narratives or those stories, then you're automatically left behind. And this is all a lie, because no one should be left behind. There should not be a hierarchy of value to humans created by God. If God created each one of us in God's image, then there is no standard that all of us have to live up to. I mean, I would say maybe except for being honest about who we are. I think when we are created in God's image and we try to conform to images that are sold to us so there is actually a scripture that I think of often when I think about honesty. And it's John 8:32, and it says, "Then you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." When we talk about loving your neighbor as yourself, you have to love yourself in that scenario. And I think that connects back to what I was saying earlier about another number one rule is about being honest with ourselves and with others. Because if we can't be honest, we really cannot love. The honesty is what creates the trust. It's what creates the intimacy. It's what creates the courage and the vulnerability and the authenticity. All of these things, you have to be brave to do them. And Brene Brown, she talked about that great in her Called to Courage Netflix special. So you all should definitely check her out. I also think about in terms of justice work. If you're thinking about, beyond yourself and how to love your neighbor. So your neighbor includes your spouse, your children, your family, whoever, right? But it also affects the larger society. Because if you think about how we're interconnected, if we work on our own stuff and our own relationships, and we model how that looks to people who maybe have never been exposed to things like, hey, you really should be honest, or you really should be more loving. If they see how that works in practice, it gives them more courage to do things that they might be too scared to do without seeing your example. So this sort of healthy living is actually affecting the healthy living of the whole planet. And since we have so much trauma going in the world, and especially in this country, it actually becomes an act of social justice, to be honest. I suggest the following. I suggest that we replace lies with truth. We replace hate with love. And we replace fear with courage. And if you notice in all of those statements, the only way that you can defeat the negative side is by doing the positive side. It isn't about our words only. It's actually what we practice every single day. Actually, all of those would take courage because it isn't easy to be truthful. It isn't easy to be loving, and it isn't easy to be courageous. If it were, we would probably have a lot more of that going on in the world. One thing I think is super important for us to acknowledge is that we have to accept that we're wrong sometimes. We have to accept that we just do make mistakes, and lying about them only compounds them. And I also tie that back to self-love. If we are totally honest with ourselves, then we know that there are plenty of areas where we need to do better. I myself could do a whole video of all the areas where I could improve. But the key is that I know that and that I'm working on that. It does not mean that I have it all figured out and I have a list of things that I need to work on and I'm in process and it'll all be perfect. It's a first step to acknowledge none of us are perfect. We all mess up, and sometimes we mess up by accident. We don't even know that we're hurting someone. That's where honesty and self-love, I keep coming back to that connectedness. So if I only celebrate my good qualities, I have a one-sided view of myself. If I only focus on my negative qualities, I also have a wrong view of myself. So we have to be careful because, particularly if you're a person that suffers from not feeling good enough or not being acceptable in some way, low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, fear, loneliness. There's so many reasons why we would tear down ourselves, think I'm not good enough. But that's a lie too. So I think the more that we accept our flaws as just being part of the journey, the more we're able to be truly honest, even when it's hard. And the more we practice that with our own self, the more we can practice that in relationship. And the more we can practice that in the entire world. So when we acknowledge our flaws and, our good side as well, we have a more balanced and realistic view. This helps us to be more even in our reactions, and this helps us to be more patient with others when they're figuring out their balance as well. And as we're all going through this journey of honesty, it comes to a really important idea that we let go of condemnation and judgment. As I look at society and I look at our interactions with each other, and even, watching stuff on Netflix or TV, if you look at the bad guy in these contexts, if you look at their backstory, you can almost always see that there was a time when they made a mistake and they were judged so harshly and had such a problem that they lost themselves, they broke. I think that the key to this being connected to honesty and love is that if we can admit that we made a mistake and forgive ourselves and learn from it and have the courage to honestly admit to someone when we made a mistake and have them forgive us, that builds our courage. That helps us know that being honest does hurt sometimes, but it also heals. And so instead of becoming, the bad guy in the comic series, or the person who blows up the world, or the person who becomes someone like Hitler, if someone had been with them, been present with them in their honesty about their struggles, maybe they could find appropriate role models for them, appropriate treatment plans. There's so many things we can do if we actually know what reality is and can face the bad and the good together, and not see either one as the end of the world. Really, they're two sides of the same coin. So we have to forgive ourselves as we're honest with ourselves, and as we love ourselves, and as we have courage to do that, we're able to help others have courage to do that. In the idea of acceptance, there is addressing the idea of shame and guilt. Shame and guilt, they're not emotions that we should live with all the time. They're emotions that we should acknowledge that we have them, acknowledge that we made a mistake, but not dwell on those emotions. The emotions that we need to deal on is telling ourselves, hey, I made a mistake. I was honest about it. I lived with the consequences of that fact. I made amends where necessary, and I'm on a journey, and I am growing. That is how you fight shame and guilt. When you notice in your body how you feel after you tell the truth, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the more you do it, the more you do feel physically free as well. And the more that you practice owning your stuff, being vulnerable, the more that you are able to do that with other people. And again, all of these ideas create connections between us. These heal relationships with ourselves and with others. But we also need safety to do that. I cannot say that, if there's someone in your life who's harming you, there may need to be therapists and trained people to help intervene in that situation. I would not want you to put yourself in a place of being vulnerable with someone who is unsafe. As we become more honest, we'll start to know who is safe for us. And myself, as a pastor, one thing that I plan to do as I'm starting a congregation is have a trauma-informed space. A place of safety so that if you don't have those people in your life, if you don't have people that you can be honest about your mistakes or about how they are affecting you, then you can come here and practice with us. Because we all need safety in order to get the courage to do what needs to be done. We're a lot here today, and there's so much more to cover. So primarily in this video, what I focused on is how honesty and lies affect us personally and interpersonally. I did bring in some cultural contexts. However, there are so many more cultural contexts to unpack that I will be doing that in our next installment. So stay tuned, and remember, be honest.